Kamala Harris is reaching out to Republican voters in swing states like Pennsylvania, and she's doing it with the help of prominent Republican surrogates.
So I am joined today by over 100 Republican leaders from across Pennsylvania and across our country who are supporting my candidacy for President of the United States. And I am deeply honored to have their support.
One of the Republicans on stage with Harris last week was former Virginia Representative Barbara Comstock. She was in Congress during Donald Trump's time in office, and she's one of the many now who has endorsed Harris for president. With just over 2 weeks to go before Election Day, I asked Representative Comstock about winning over disaffected Republican voters and why she's speaking out against her party. Representative Barbara Comstock, thank you so much for being here.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
You joined over 100 Republicans at a campaign event for Vice President Harris in Pennsylvania. What was that like to be with a bunch of fellow Republicans, but out supporting a Democratic candidate?
It was wonderful. As a lot of my colleagues I have worked with for decades, because I was also a congressional staffer. And I think we all share the concern that we want somebody who is going to respect the rule of law, respect the Constitution, both here in our country, but also abroad with our allies, and respecting the long tradition of, supporting our, constitutional republic, and being, a strong country that works with our allies. So I think it was a great event, and that's the reason you see so many Republicans with the vice president, is because Donald Trump is a unique threat.
You have publicly said that you didn't vote for Trump in 2016 or 2020, but you also didn't vote for Clinton or Biden. So this will be your first time voting for a Democratic candidate. Why did you feel like that needed to happen this time, and that you needed to make that very public?
Well, particularly since January 6th. Sure. I mean, before in 16 and 20, Trump's misogyny and certainly his personality and how certainly his attacks on women were just repugnant to me. But after January 6th, the line was just such a red line in all the rule of law issues. It just is unacceptable to have this person who has been lying for 4 years and refusing to accept that he lost the election. He is just a unique danger. At every rally that he holds, he claims that he won the election. He'll go to various swing states like Pennsylvania, like Georgia, and claim that he won, even though 60 lawsuits that he himself, filed, or his campaign filed, so he lost all of those. But he even goes into states like California and claims, if there wasn't cheating, I would have won. So he undermines the rule of law and respect for our institutions and our democracy, which is highly dangerous. When we're, I know, with your country too, we're out there trying to support the rule of law in other countries, and Donald Trump makes a mockery of it because he's just a sore loser and can't accept the fact that the country rejected him and needs to reject him again.
So how do you explain then, Representative Comstock, why it is still so close, and why there are still many Americans who feel that Donald Trump is the right choice, that he does say the things that make sense for them?
Well, unfortunately, because he has lied for 4 years, and unfortunately because there are a lot of elected officials who've sort of gone along silently with those lies, there's a lot of people who just don't understand. They get their news, say, on Fox News, and they don't realize that all these things are lies. So that is why so many of us Republicans are now stepping forward and being very public. And with the ad campaign and the fact that the vice president does have more financial support in these closing months, in these closing weeks, we want to break through what has been a silence by many Republicans and, get those messages to people that Donald Trump has been lying to them. We don't blame a lot of those voters, the rank and file voters, for not knowing that Trump is lying to them. because in many cases, their own representatives have stayed silent while Donald Trump has lied because he intimidates, he's a bully, he threatens primaries against any Republican who doesn't fall in line with him.
Yeah.
So that's why we're standing up to the bully and saying, he's lying. You don't need to go along with him. And I do believe because of that, it will move the needle. And when you explain to everybody his own vice president, most of his own cabinet, all of these military people, military, his own chief of staff, who he said, are military, these military who died and sacrificed for their country. He called them suckers and losers. That was John Kelly, his chief of staff, who said that. And he lives in my district, and I know John Kelly as a man of honor. So when you break through and tell those stories, I think more and more people are, going to reject having 4 more years of what is becoming an unhinged person who we also are seeing is in mental decline. And more and more newspapers are saying, look, this guy hasn't turned over his medical records. Yeah. And we are seeing that mental decline right in front of us. He's sleepy, he's unhinged, he has cut back on interviews and attending events, canceling events in the past weeks. He's really dangerous and unhinged.
Let me end on this, Representative Comstock. To that end, he has also, Donald Trump, talked about political retribution in the past number of weeks, going after people who he would view as, quote, sort of an enemy within. I think that would include you, even though you're a Republican. Does that concern you, that he does have this intention to fight back if he becomes president?
Well, that's exactly why I have come out and be public, because I think you have to stand up to bullies. And that's why so many of us have done that. So, certainly there is a concern. I think that's why you don't have more people standing up, frankly, because a lot of people worry about, people get death threats. Many of the people in his own cabinet, certainly Mike Pence, on January 6th, the mob was saying, hang Mike Pence. And we know that Donald Trump's reaction was, so what? I mean, what an outrage. If he didn't care about his own vice president getting threatened like that, how can the American people think he cares about them? This is a person who only cares about himself and will be using, the legal system for retribution, instead of having somebody like Kamala Harris to be focused on their issues and their concerns.
Barbara Comstock, thank you for making the time for Canada this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
With us today, Canada's own Josh Wingrove, White House reporter at Bloomberg News, and Darlene Superville, White House reporter at the Associated Press. Good to see both of you. Thanks for making the time, because I know you don't really have time right now, but I appreciate it. Josh, you've been on the trail with Kamala Harris this past week. Give us a sense of what you're seeing and hearing from her in terms of what it tells us about the state of things.
I mean, the top line, Rosemary, is that everything Adrian Dix just said could apply to what's happening here in November, like down to the wire, very close elections, anger at incumbent governments. All this is resonating. And to give you a sense, she is in Georgia today. Today's vice president's birthday, but then she's going to Pennsylvania. This will be the 8th day in a row that she sets foot in these 3 blue wall battlegrounds, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. I was in some of them with her this week, and the optimistic view, if you're the Harris campaign, is that they are trying to shore up an inside lane. These are traditionally blue states. They all have Democratic governors. Joe Biden won them in 2020. The more pessimistic view, and Democrats have a habit of worrying at this stage in the cycle, is that she's having to play defense at states that should be her strongest. And there's a path for her to win the presidency by the narrowest of margins. I mean, 270 electoral votes to 268 if she wins just those 3 of the 7 main battlegrounds. And so it feels like in some ways, part of this race is really coming down to those 3. And it just goes to show you how razor thin this thing is shaping up to be. I know it's trite. When I was home a week ago for Thanksgiving, everyone kept asking me, what's going to happen? And it's like, I wish I could say something other than it seems like a coin flip, or more accurately, 7 coin flips.
Wow. Darlene, you were traveling with the First Lady this past week. She was campaigning for the first time really since the president stepped aside. What did you notice about her message and how that fits into what Josh is saying there?
That's right. She was also in battleground states, Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. The one thing that is striking and obvious now about the First Lady's message is that it's totally flipped, obviously, from a message of support for her husband, Joe Biden, and she's now out on the trail in her remarks during all of her stops, validating the vice president, talking about the vice president's background, things in her past, in her career that the First Lady says has turned the vice president into a leader and the leader that the United States needs right now. And so she is she's going to be one of the top surrogates out there, along with former President Barack Obama, who's recently started campaigning for the vice president to boost Harris in these final days.
Well, Josh, as well as Barack Obama, Michelle Obama is going to be out campaigning with Harris, her first appearance, I think, during this cycle. And I noticed this morning Liz Cheney is going to be out with Kamala Harris as well. What is the significance of all those people? I suppose the two Obamas, too, getting out there and helping.
Yeah, I mean, Michelle Obama gave over, I guess, nearly 2 months ago now, a speech at the DNC saying, do something. And she hasn't been on the trail since then. So I think people have been waiting to see her. She's, of course, one of, if not the most popular figure in the Democratic Party, hoping that they can help boost turnout. Combined with the Cheney thing, and you'll hear more from former Congressman Comstock later, I suppose, on that event that they had, they are trying to basically peel off, 4 or 5 groups. One is Republicans who can't stand Trump. One is boosting Black support, which is weak. Harris in some polls has been lower overall than Joe Biden was 4 years ago, in particular with Black men, but also broadly. And suburban women as well are another group. Young men, they've started advertising on fantasy sports sites to try to turn that around. Yeah. They're really trying to get in the weeds on all these, and that's why we're seeing this. But this barnstorm push comes as Trump really seems to be on offense in those 3 northern states and really doing everything himself. One thing, Rosemary, that also is hanging in the ground is throughout this all, 4 months ago when everyone was wondering, about Joe Biden, and he was, 3 months ago when he was facing calls to step down or not, what they would always say is, look, our ground game is better. Democrats say they've invested in more field offices, more organizational capability. You go to these states, it doesn't seem apparent that the Republicans have kept pace on it. For instance, I was driving around Michigan all week. I don't think I saw a single Trump billboard, but it's Trump himself doing all of it. So that is one thing giving Democrats at least a bit of calm, is they think that when push comes to shove, that ground game could be the difference in just these sort of narrow margin races.
Interesting. And that may be, as you said, because there are Republicans like the representative we're going to talk to in the next hour who are not on side with Trump and, in fact, working against him. Darlene, Trump's campaign is really courting Latino voters. Josh mentioned it there. Why are they doing that? Why is that resonating for some Latino voters in the U.S.?
Well, both campaigns are courting Latino voters. They're among the fastest growing demographic groups in the United States. But I think one of the reasons that you've seen Trump's support growing among Latinos is that Latinos are not a single issue voting group, right? Of course, immigration policy isn't the only thing that drives them to the polls. They are just as concerned about the economy, high prices, rents, buying a home as white Americans and Black Americans. And for a long time, a lot of the polling in the U.S., Trump was leading on the question of who would better handle the economy. So I think that's one of the reasons, or a chief reason, that you're seeing Trump's support strong among Latinos and why he's also going after them.
Josh, just quickly, Kamala Harris, we saw in that clip, commented on Yahya Sinwar's killing the Hamas leader, saying he had American blood on his hands. What is the significance of her weighing in there? Because obviously she's trying, I guess, to project strength and the role of the U.S. going forward in the Middle East if she were to win the election. Yeah,
it's twofold. One is sort of showing cred on foreign affairs issues, which, of course, is always an issue for presidential candidates. The other is, of course, Democrats broadly, and Harris specifically, most recently have been dogged by demands from the left flank of their party, as well as Arab American and Muslim American voters who want, more done to stop the fighting in Gaza. Harris has really been pinned. She can't put too much distance from Israel. So the hope is that the killing of Sinwar might allow her to at least rhetorically really amp up the pressure now for a ceasefire and see whether that will shore up Democratic support in these battlegrounds, in particular in Michigan, where there's a threat of voters going to third-party candidates, which is going to help Trump.
Josh Wingrove, Darlene Superville, I don't know how you're both standing. You've only got 2 weeks to go. And then there'll be a whole other cycle of stories. But thank you for fitting me in. I appreciate it. Good to see you both.
Thank you.
Hang in there. Thanks.